4 books so far. Fifth one is in the works. And I live in a little town in southern central New Hampshire on a dead-end street off another dead-end street, kind of out in the woods, but we got really good Wi-Fi. So I love it here.
It's so important to have good Wi-Fi these days, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
I remember when you're a little bit older than me, and I say that respectfully.
Yeah.
Do you remember dial-up?
Oh, I do very well because we had dial-up when I had my DJ business, and I used to line up 7 or 8 songs that I would need for the next day's wedding at night. I'd go to bed and realize that dial-up disconnected halfway through the third song. Yeah, I remember dial-up.
I remember things being so much simpler. I was just happy if no one called during a download.
Right.
Right? I was
Yep.
like, please, no one call. And for those who don't know what dial up is how we used to connect to the internet before we have this beautiful creation now. So it would use one of the lines on the home phone. And if someone called and you didn't have call waiting, you would be disconnected. So
Hmm.
for those who stream shows, for those who download stuff, imagine you're watching your favorite show, listening to your favorite song, watching your favorite event, and someone calls and it's click, it's all
Yep.
gone. And you
Yep.
realize it's probably a telemarketer, it's that cousin that you don't like, it's that ex that continues to bother you, and you're like, leave me alone. Because back then we
Mhm.
used to have free evenings and weekends. We even have
Yeah.
all day calling. Do you remember those days, Steve?
I do. I remember having to wait till after a certain time at night because the price was going to be minimal compared to what it would have been before, say, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. Yeah.
Yeah, those are tough. So speaking of happiness,
Yeah.
what makes you happy?
What makes me happy is at the end of the day, if I put my head on the pillow and I feel that I had way more plus signs trailing behind me today than minus signs, I did pretty good. Because I just try to be a human plus sign. Every interaction, I try to leave a little bit more positively than I found it. And if I stack up enough of those, then I get something to write in my gratitude journal the next morning. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me. Yeah.
When it comes to, let's say, someone who isn't you and I, someone who's struggling in life and they're trying to figure it out, what do you think are maybe some of the common obstacles that could prevent someone from not only feeling happy in their life, but let's say feeling content with their life?
I think the biggest thing is they don't know what actually would make them happy. See, we also live in an age of social media when people are out there trotting out things like Lamborghinis, yachts, private jets, mansions, supermodel partners, big honking gold watches, and bank vaults full of gold bars and pallets of cash, and saying, "Hey, look, I'm successful. I'm happy." And people who don't have that stuff, well, they feel like they're lacking. So they're struggling. They just don't know what would actually make them happy. They haven't taken the time to sit down and actually think of what it is.
That's tough. I used to have an Instagram account. It was all my gym exercises. And
Mhm.
one thing that I realized as I was putting it up there, it was basically just me tracking my journey. I was trying to go from 135 pounds to 170, 180, which I am now. So I had to put on quite a bit of muscle at the time. I was happy posting and sharing until I wasn't happy posting and sharing. It became a
Mm,
chore.
yeah.
And I started to realize, am I doing this for me? Am I doing it for other people who many of them I don't even know besides the comment and the like?
Yeah.
And then I took that information and I asked some of the people, the women that I work with, are you living a life that makes other people happy? Or are you living a life that makes you happy? And
Mhm.
Steve, I was surprised at how many answers I got that people are living their lives for other people. Do
Mhm.
you see that as well? And if so, why do you think that is?
Well, I'm 58 years old and I was raised Catholic when I was a kid. So I think we've got guilt interwoven in our DNA if we don't help other people. And I think the previous generations, they just did for others. Generations before us were not as self-gratifying as we're seeing in the world now. So I think there's a lot of guilt with regard to that. And a lot of people are people pleasers. I'm a recovering people pleaser myself. I put myself out there. Boy, I would be a doormat for so many people over the years, but I'd be so frustrated on the inside. that I wasn't living my best life because I was becoming a martyr for so many other people. And I think there's still a lot of people trapped in that. And it wasn't until the last decade or so that I started to realize, the phone dials two ways. When I'm the one that's calling everybody to check in and see how they're doing, when I'm the one that's volunteering to drive something halfway across town to somebody who needs it, and boy, when I need a little help, phew, crickets. And there's nobody around. So in one fell swoop, in about 15 minutes one time between meetings, this is about 8 years ago, I deleted about 60% of the contacts out of my phone, sitting in a parking lot of my gym in between meetings, and not one of those names has ever made it back into my phone. And as soon as I did that, I felt like I'd lost 100 pounds. I felt like I'd lost all the weight that you were trying to put on.
I took it from you. I packed it out here, right?
There you go. Well,
People
I'm down about
pleasing.
35 pounds in the last 5 years anyway, so maybe that was the transfer right there.
Congratulations. How does that feel?
It feels amazing. May 4th will be 5 years without alcohol. It'll be 5 years of exercising at least 5 days a week. Minimum 2,400 miles a year since January of 2022 on our Peloton cycle. It's been amazing because I was sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. A nightly, very tall rum and coke had become a lazy habit. The pandemic had wiped out both my companies, my speaking and my DJ business. So I was sitting home drinking at least one tall rum and coke every night. And all that sugar and everything got me up to 247 pounds. Now I'm 6'2". I could carry it, but I wasn't sleeping well. I would stop breathing 6 to 8 times an hour. I wound up with a CPAP. And on May 4th, I woke up and I just said, I'm done. And that night I looked at the bottle of rum in the kitchen pantry closet and I smiled and I gave it the finger. And I've been doing that ever since with a smile, giving it the finger.
How were you able to find the courage to take that step forward and change your life in the way that you changed it?
I coached myself like I coach my clients. Basically, I asked myself, what do you want? What do you really want? Not just what everybody else in the world thinks you should have. And so I started to write it out and I described it, just like I describe everything else in my life that I want to achieve as a goal. What does it look like, feel like, sound like, smell like, taste like? Attach all the senses, create a very important why behind it, emotionally connected. Why? Because I wanted to live as long as I could. I wanted to be in the best physical shape and emotions to spend every day madly in love with my wife, Tina, and just to be the best version of me for her every day. And my energy was down. I've dealt with depression on and off throughout my life anyway. And I just didn't want to feel like that anymore. I just had no energy. I was falling asleep in my chair by 10 a.m. I had a 5 hour energy habit that lasted 16 years, one little bottle per day for 16 years. And even that was not touching the lack of energy I had. And I just said, that's it. And I just put down the rum and I just started walking. And then walking led to a couple other, going through the pandemic. So I was exercising at home. So I got some adjustable dumbbells, got a little cheapo workout bench and some resistance bands. We get the Peloton cycle. I got some battle ropes. So I had this great little workout thing going. And 35 pounds took a couple of years, but 35 pounds was gone and never came back.
I look at that when I hear your story and I hear what you've done, it sounds like to me you're finally taking a moment for yourself. In other words, you're kind to yourself.
Yeah.
This is how I wanted to be kind to myself. I'm going to put down the bottle. I'm going to pick up the dumbbell. I'm doing this for me, but also I'm doing this for my beautiful partner
Yeah.
who who probably loves me, who's showing me all this love. And I think sometimes I look at like my relationship and it's just they give you so much love, Steve,
Yeah.
right? And then you ask yourself, am I loving myself too? Right? Like you want that love from other people, right? But am I loving myself as well? When you're going through the depression, the alcohol, Did you ever ask yourself if you were loving yourself during those times?
Oh, I know I wasn't because I was not taking care of the body that God gave me. And uh, put it this way, if self-deprecation was an Olympic sport, man, I'd sweep the gold in the decathlon because I'm 58 and my self-talk has only been positive for about 15 or 16 years. Matter of fact, I had a young lady I saw something she said on social media about herself, and I reached out to her. I said, "Hey, let's hop on a Zoom call. I just want to talk to you about self-talk." And she blew me off for the call. And I reached out to her, saw she was online the next day, and I sent her a DM. I said, "Hey, here's a Zoom link. Let's just hop on a call right now, just real quick." And she did. I give her credit. And I said, "Hey, I just wanted to check in because we had a call yesterday. I want to make sure you're okay." And she goes, "I'm really embarrassed, but I blew off the call because I'm so um, what's the word she used? She was intimidated by my self confidence. And I started laughing. And she goes, "What are you laughing? Are you laughing at me?" I said, "No." I said, "But my self confidence and positive self talk can barely drive a car. And it sure as hell can't buy a beer yet." She goes, "What do you mean?" I go, "I used to be way worse than what I saw you say about yourself yesterday. So let's just have a talk and let's lighten up a bit on ourselves." And I said, "Here's my routine now. I get up at 5:05 a.m. Monday through Friday. Turn off the alarm within 5 beeps. Count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Put both feet on the floor. Get in the bathroom mirror. High five myself. Point at myself and I say, 'I love you because you're a good dude,' and with a big heart." And since losing my wife, Tina, 15 months ago, I always point up and I go, "And you love your Tina. So today, you're going to honor her. Today, you're going to make progress. Today, you're going to leave a whole bunch of plus signs behind you." And I shared that with this young lady. And I said, "Now that's how you start a day, when you honor yourself." And I hope she's doing well. I hope she continued with it. But 15, 20 years ago, I couldn't have said that. According to my journals, in around 2002, 2003, right after I'd blown up my career, first marriage, and any shred of financial stability at the age of 35. According to my journals, I used to refer to myself as Hurricane Dumbass Category 5.
How did you come up with that name?
It just fell out one day because I've got a background. I was a radio personality at the time, and I was just about to start doing stand-up comedy. So I just love storytelling and creating funny things and just creating names and hashtags and little phrases. And that one just fell out one day. And somebody said, "How much did you mess up your life?" And I said, "Well, let's see. The weatherman would probably call me Hurricane Dumbass Category 5 because that's the strongest one."
You mentioned the loss of your of Tina. My condolences
Yeah, thank you.
to the. You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
You're welcome. I know it's not easy, grief.
No.
I share with a number of people that it's one thing to lose someone, it's another thing to lose identity that maybe you're connected with that person.
Yeah.
So some people may, if they lose a child, do they still feel that they're a parent? Some people may struggle with that thought. If you lose a spouse, some people may feel, am I still a husband or a wife? Some people may struggle with that. When I lost my grandmother, that grandmother to me was my mother because I didn't grow up with my mother or my father. So
Mm,
when she passed away October 2024, I thought to myself, am I going to be the same person?
yeah.
I knew I wouldn't be the same person, but that didn't mean I had to be worse.
Mm,
I could have been better. So one thing I do when I speak to a couple of grief groups that I speak to with is that what I learned is that I've taken all the beautiful characteristics, the behaviors of this person that I lost, and I've transformed it into my superpower. And then I put
mm,
on my cape. And let me
yeah.
tell you, Steve, I fly, baby, I fly when I'm thinking of that person. Because when I'm struggling through something, I soar like Superman. When I need to fix something, I have all my gadgets like Batman. I feel like I cannot be stopped
No.
when I take that person's essence, their energy, their spirit, whatever it is you call it, and I use it to make myself a better person.
Yeah.
When you think of Tina, what are some of the beautiful things that you remember her remember about her, and how does that make you feel motivated and inspired to continue forward in your life?
She was the sweetest, kindest, most gentle, loving, caring, thoughtful person I've ever met. Um, we actually went to high school together, and we were great friends all through high school. And I had a crush on her, but never asked her out. 21 years after graduation of zero contact, she reached out to me in an email from 1,300 miles away. Coincidentally, about 10 days after I wrote in my journal, I am ready to fall in love. That was June of 2007. As soon as we started talking on the phone and texting, and a month later, she admitted she'd had a crush on me in high school. We both knew. I still have emails from the summer of 2007. And keep in mind, at the time, she was still in Florida. I was still in New Hampshire. I have emails that say, we're still going to be holding hands when we're 80. And it never wavered. I mean, I fell in love summer of 2007 with my heart wide open and my eyes closed because she refused to send me a picture of herself, nor did she have a social media footprint. I fell in love in the most amazing way you can. Eyes closed, pure 100% heart. And that never went away for the 6,386 days, 17 and a half years, that I got to be in love with her. We told each other we loved each other every day. And another thing I miss about Tina is her sense of humor because she had this amazing sarcasm to her. Every night we'd be snuggled on the couch after dinner, and I'd give her a foot rub, and I'd look over and I'd go, "Love you." She wouldn't even look at me. She would just go, "I know." And I would start laughing every time. And sometimes she'd look at me laughing and she'd say, "Thank you," which would make me laugh even harder. So she was so perfectly timed. And she was a very private person. A lot of the world never got to see all those parts of her. But oh my gosh, we were wide open books with each other. And I miss that the most. I miss the silliness, the playfulness. I miss we would cook dinner together at least 4 nights a week, laughing and joking and shouting out to Alexa to play our favorite songs and just being silly and just having fun. I miss that a lot.
That's the type of love I wish everyone can experience when it comes to that. That sounds like I make this joke where love enters through the eyes, right? Because you're seeing that person, but you're seeing them when it's love. It doesn't matter if it's love at 20, 30, or 2000 years old. You're still seeing them with those same loving eyes. It reminds me of the couple who's 80 years old and they still hold hands because when they're holding hands and walking through the park, they're still seeing themselves as a 30-year-old version of themselves
Yeah.
because love like that is timeless.
Yeah.
What are some of the ways today that you're honoring her memory and how great of a person that she still is?
Yeah. Oh, and she still is. Gosh, she's still here in our home, and she shows me signs almost daily that she's still here. So I've got a couple of shelves in our living room with my favorite pictures of us. My speaker agent sent me a beautiful candle holder. It's kind of like a globe with pieces of mirror all around it. And for about 2 months out of the year, December, January, and first week of February, the sun comes in the morning and it hits her two shelves and it hits that mirrored thing and it sends starbursts all around the walls and stuff. Um, this month now, a smaller table in another part of the living room that the sun blazes in brightly and shines right on these pictures of us. And I opened the shade yesterday and I looked at it and tears just came out and I just had the biggest smile. Um, my family and I have a nonprofit. Tina was one of the founding members. We've been doing acts of kindness consistently since 2012. It's called Beach Bum Philanthropy. And a little over 5 years ago, it became a 501c3. One of the first things I did after Tina passed away was come up with a way to honor her with an act of kindness. So we work with a couple shelters that help single moms and some single dads. When they get out of the shelter program and into their own apartment, they literally have nothing. So we created a thing called Tina's Buckets of Love. It's a laundry basket, a kitchen trash can, and a mop bucket filled with every kitchen utensil, cleaning supply, personal care items that we can fit in there, and we gift that to the parents as they're going into their new place that they've scrimped and saved and worked just to be able to afford to live somewhere. We among some other nonprofits, we provide those items for them. And actually, in the back of my truck right now is our 14th installment um, of Tina's Buckets of Love. So that's the way that, as a family, my family and I honor her. And I delivered the first two a little over a year ago. I tear up every single time, but I wrote an article last year called "Who Was That Tall Man Crying at the Dollar Tree?" Oh yeah, it was me. Bawling my eyes out at the Dollar Tree shopping for the very first Buckets of Love. And I had to explain to the cash register person why I could barely talk. And I was just crying uncontrollably. But it felt good just to share who she was and how she was.
You mentioned crying, and that took me back to the first time I cried during my grief journey. It was very private. I could look at the corner where it was
Yeah.
in my finished basement. Did you find a difference between the way you cried when it's maybe in private or in public? Since you mentioned there was one that was very public at the Dollar Tree.
Yeah. Um, no, I mean, if the tears are there, they're there. I am an empath. I may even be a super empath. I feel everything exponentially deeper than regular everyday people do. So when a Tina thought, or if I can feel, sense that Tina's here or she shows a sign, I'll smile, but the tears will start coming out. When she passed away, we were actually in the UK. So we were 3,000 miles from home, and 24 hours after we arrived, she passed away in our hotel room. She had ischemic heart disease. I had no idea it was as bad as it was because she didn't want me to worry about her. But I found her in a hotel room. She still had a pulse. Somebody came running up, and she literally died in my arms while we were trying to revive her as the EMTs were on their way. Her body was there in our hotel room for 11 hours until the coroners were able to get there. So I bawled my eyes out most of that day and gave her final foot rub that afternoon as I cried my eyes out, telling her she wasn't supposed to leave me. So the crying varies, but there are days when it still just hits me really, really hard. If something takes me back to that hotel room, then it's probably better for me to just be alone for that because I really, as much as people care, I just want to cry it out. And I just want to have a very personal conversation with her without other people around.
There's a song, One Sweet Day by Mariah Carey and Boys to Men.
Mhm.
That song makes me, every time I hear it, even now I'm starting to feel it. It makes
Yeah,
me cry.
yeah,
It's a
yeah,
song about losing someone that's really close to you, but they're in heaven looking down on you.
yeah,
And for those who may not believe in that, they're in another place connecting with you in the way that they would connect.
yeah,
And that song has been making me cry ever since I was a child. And I didn't know back then until I spoke to someone who is like a mentor coach in like energy and things of that nature. And two people, and they both share that during there's something in your life that either has happened and maybe you forgot about it or that may happen. Now, sometimes you may hear these things and you have a self-fulfilling prophecy because now you're trying to tie a future event to that.
yeah,
Um, but when my grandmother passed away, that's all I can think about was that song.
yeah,
I played that song and I started to cry.
yeah,
I needed that cry because it was days, maybe about a week, week and a half, until I just let the emotions overtake me. Because when I found out I was actually at work in a meeting that I was presenting for, that's how I found
Oh,
out that
wow.
she passed away. So, and I work from home. So I got the phone call. I paused, went back. Imagine you're going into a meeting with all this energy, you're prepared for it. The person that was there for you passes away. Now you got to go back and finish that meeting. So I was like, okay, I'm going to finish and then I'm going to leave. So I finished. I was still in shock. It took me a couple of days before I cried, but when I listened to that song, I started to cry. I needed that cry because I felt that I was letting everything out that I couldn't for the last couple of days. When you mentioned you gave her last foot rub, when you mentioned the things that you said, when you mentioned that you cried, was that, how would you describe the feeling of that day and then the day after in comparison to it?
Total numbness and just impossible to even comprehend that she wasn't here with me anymore. It's just, I mean, and I was numb for a good chunk of last year. You know, people say that the second year is worse. And I used to wonder, how could it possibly be worse? Oh, that's right, because now you can feel emotions again. So there was a lot of numbness. Unfortunately, there was some stuff also happening behind the scenes, unfortunately, that I can't really discuss, but there was, there's some conflict as well. So it's been tough to just grieve Tina. Although about a week and a half ago, I had, for the first time, where I had nothing else in my mind except for her and the loss. I went to one of our favorite Chinese food restaurants. I was visiting her dad, and he and I have a wonderful relationship. And I was visiting him and driving back through town, and I said, I haven't been to this restaurant. I haven't done any takeout other than with my family in a year and a half. And I said, I want to stop by this restaurant because Tina and I used to love it. And the owner adored Tina. And she saw me in the waiting area after I placed my order. And she said, Oh, Steve, I haven't seen you in so long. How are you? Now, when I pulled into the parking lot and saw the sign, it started to hit me. When I walked in the door, it hit me even harder. And when she said, Steve, how are you? I just started falling apart. And I kind of gestured. I didn't want to shout this across her restaurant. So I walked all the way up to the back and I shared with her. And she gave me three very tight hugs as I started to fall apart. And when I got home, I realized that was the first time that the only thing on my mind was that Tina was gone. And that one hit me really hard. So I look forward to when I'm just grieving Tina.
Emotions, I will agree with that. This that second year, when I started to feel again, even maybe it was a little bit sooner than that, it was tough.
Yeah.
It was tough. I shared with someone asked me a couple questions when it comes to grief because that's primarily what I work with when it comes to the women I work with.
Mm-hmm.
And I share that when you're going through that grief journey, it intensifies every single emotion once you start to feel them again. I gave her the example, that restaurant that you guys used to go to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like it takes courage, it takes strength to go into there because you used to go in there as a couple. It used to be the
Mm-hmm.
both of you.
Yeah.
Now you got to go by yourself. And she was like, I didn't think about it. Like, I was like, yeah, especially if you're living with that person, you're eating dinner without that person. You're going to bed without that person. You're watching your favorite shows without that person. And what's interesting, you mentioned that she had a really good sense of humor. I can see her making, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, making humor of something. And at this point, you're expecting it, but then it's a reminder that maybe she's not there because you don't hear it anymore. Even though you hear it in your mind, maybe because, oh, Tina would say this. Oh, you know what? My grandmother would say that, right? But you hear it, but other people may not be able to hear it. Do you go through those moments as well where you see something, you know exactly how she's going to react to it, and then it's a reminder that she's not physically there with you anymore?
Oh yeah, all the time. And I still watch. I don't watch that much new television, so I watch all my favorite classic sitcoms, King of Queens and Mom and Everybody Loves Raymond and all those shows. We always watched them together. And when she would be traveling for business, I used to take my phone if I found one of the episodes, one of her favorite scenes, and I would film it on my phone, like 30 seconds, I would send her the videos and say, "Hey, baby, thinking of you. And I know this was your favorite." And a couple of them just last week popped up, and I always look over at her end of the couch, which is just all of her pillows still stacked up because she had like a nice little cozy place to sit. And I just say, "You're supposed to be sitting there, babe, because this is your favorite. And I know you'd be laughing right now." So I think of her, I mean, gosh, every day. Our home is still such a reminder that of her presence. Um, so here I stay because she's still so much a part of this home. It was ours.
You mentioned the charity that you are working with, that you founded, that you created.
Yeah.
Um, when you're helping the single mothers, and you mentioned single fathers as well, so when you're helping the single parent, how much of yourself do you see in the people that you assist with?
We don't actually get to meet them very often. We just kind of drop off the stuff at the program and they take care of giving it to them. But I've met a couple of them. And God, I remember some very tough, starving days. Now, I don't have children, and Tina never had kids. So I don't understand that level of the struggle that these folks are going through. But we do a lot of work with homeless shelters as well. And people come in and off the streets. And boy, there's a couple of cold weather days, 10, 20 below zero with the wind chill. And we'd see these people coming in off the street just for a warm meal that we were there helping to provide. And I just shake my head and I said, I cannot even imagine. You know, I'm going through pain. I lost the love of my life, my soulmate, my twin flame. This person barely made it here just because they need a place to be warm and maybe some warm food. Some of them don't even know where they're going to sleep that night. I'm going to get into my truck with the heated seats and drive home to our home, even though Tina's not here anymore. I'm still safe. I'm still warm. And my heart needs to remember that there are people in the world who really need this. So I can't just hibernate. I can't pull the shades. I can't stay under the covers. I got to get up every day and go create those plus signs, cook or bake something that somebody's really going to enjoy and they're going to taste the love. And that's a big part of why we do what we do. And I do a lot of baking. I bake cookies like a madman. And some of them are the biggest requests I get on the weekends. Like, hey, Steve, you going to make those cookies again? Hell yeah. Which ones are your favorite? Oh, I like this one. Okay. You going to be here next Sunday? That's the plan. Good. I'll be here too with the cookies. I'll see you then. And some of those cold days, I'd see the people come in and you could barely tell it was a human being. All you could see were their eyes and just so much pain. And I always say the same thing. I said, I'm glad you're here and I'm glad you're safe. What can I get you? And I get reminded every day of how fortunate I am and how grateful I am. I mean, gratitude's a huge part of how I live and what I teach. And that's when people say, well, your wife died right in your arms, 3,000 miles from home, leaving you all alone. What the heck could you be grateful for about that? I said, it's easy. She had a pulse when I found her. She couldn't react, but I'm hoping she could hear me say how much I love her and that she wasn't supposed to leave me. And I'm grateful for that, that technically she was still alive when I found her because my biggest fear was that she was alone and she was in pain and that she was scared. But the medics told me that it was her heart and it was very likely instant. She never felt it. So I'm grateful for that.
That is so nice to hear because I can understand where some other people would question what do you have to be grateful for because this person that you loved with all your heart, your mind, body, and soul is no longer here. But you had an opportunity where maybe some people don't, where you're able to say your goodbye. You're able to tell them, remind them,
Yeah.
I love you as the last words. How important do you think that was to you, or maybe even to her, to hear it and for you to say it?
It was very important to me because actually it's so strange. The last 2 weeks of her life, the last 2 years of her life, she was dealing with menopause side effects, and they were brutal for her. And she hadn't slept a full night in over 2 years. And she was just racked with side effects. But we went on this trip to England because her favorite singer in the world was George Michael, and his old band and musicians were doing a little tour of shows in England as a tribute with the permission and approval of his estate, which is almost impossible to get. So Tina surprised me and said, "We're going to London in December." And I said, "Don't you want to wait for better weather?" She goes, "Well," and she told me it's a tribute to George Michael. So we went. The day before, we were outside of our hotel, and I looked across the street at this tall building and I laughed. I said, "Oh my gosh, it looks like Nakatomi Plaza from the movie Die Hard with Bruce Willis." He said, "Because it ain't Christmas till you see Hans Gruber, the terrorist, fall off Nakatomi Plaza." It's like an old joke. And I didn't have my phone in my pocket. So I said, "Oh, baby, did you get your phone?" And she goes, "Yeah." So I take a picture. We get back upstairs and I said, "Oh, babe, what's the password for your phone so we can get that picture?" 17 and a half years together, I'd never asked her for her password. That night, she wanted to go downstairs to have a drink at the hotel bar. We get down there. We're like the only ones in there. So I got cranberry and soda, and she got her drink. The first three songs that play on the speakers above our head, two of them were George Michael songs. And then we had one of the deepest, most loving, caring, authentic, open, vulnerable conversations we'd ever had. Because I was in kind of a low place. You know, my business was struggling, still trying to put it back together after dealing with so much over the past few years. And she just looked at me and she said, "Babe, we're a team. We pick each other up. Do you remember when I was living in Vermont?" She moved from Florida to Vermont. She goes, "You help me with my bills every month, so please don't feel bad." And then she got vulnerable and said, "I just feel like all these years I've been lucky. Us, my job, our home, and this, and we're here." I said, "Babe, do you realize that none of this would have happened if you didn't send me an email? If you didn't send out an email to some guy you hadn't seen or talked to in 21 years, risking rejection? Look how brave you were. None of this would have happened." So we got to pick each other up in that conversation. And a couple hours prior, asked her her phone password. 12 hours later, she passes away. Everything I needed to get us both home and to be able to contact her job and her family was in her phone. She was already being my angel. And she stayed my angel, and she still is my angel. She still guides me through stuff. When I ask her for help, answers show up.
How important was the vulnerability to the both of you in your relationship?
Huge, huge. Again, it goes back to, struggling with self confidence most of my life. It's so funny that a lot of the speakers that I know are these, very famous people. They deal with the same stuff. So I was open and honest with her about it always. And she kind of was with me, but that night it was to a level that she'd never really been so vulnerable before and authentic and just genuine and almost just like just throwing all her cards on the table all at once about how she was really feeling about stuff. And it was really beautiful. And I thought about that the next day and I said, "I'm really grateful for that. I'm just so grateful for that conversation." And I just gave her a huge hug and we held hands that whole time. And matter of fact, the last photo ever taken of her, the bartender, English, not his first language, he misunderstood our drink order. And when he put my drink in front of me, she goes, "Honey, don't drink that. I think it has vodka in it." And I said, "Oh, okay." And then she asked the gentleman, she says, "Is there vodka in that?" He goes, "Oh, yes, that's what you asked for." And she goes, "No, no, 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 no. None in his." And I wanted a double. So I push it back towards him. Tina goes, "Hang on." And she grabs the glass and slides it behind like she's going to drink the mistake after she had her drink. And as she put her fingers at the top of the glass, whatever possessed me to do this, I grabbed my phone and took a picture of her fingers on the glass. Last photo ever taken of her. And that one is one of the ones that's in our living room that the sun was shining nice and bright on yesterday morning. Tina's beautiful, delicate fingers, the last photo I ever took of her.
I will encourage everyone to make sure, if you can, because I know sometimes you can't, reminders, the pictures, the memories, the jewelry, even. I look at it as a jar. And every time you spend a moment or event with someone, in this case, your spouse, you're putting memories in that jar. So if that person ever leaves, you can always have that jar with you. It doesn't have to necessarily be a physical jar. It could be a jar that you keep inside, close
Yeah,
to your heart. You protect it, you guard it, right?
yeah,
Whenever you miss them, you just pull from that jar. I remember when we went to see the tribute to George Michael.
yeah,
I remember when we went to the restaurant. I remember when we sat down and I was rubbing her feet and I told her I love her. And she said, I know.
yep,
You're welcome.
yep.
Right?
That
And
and that
these are,
still makes me laugh because oh my gosh,
yeah.
that was like 2, 3 times a week for years. And I just that's one of the greatest memories ever. It
Yeah.
is. It'll
And
be
that's
with
why
me forever.
you'll always have it. You'll always have that jar and it's always going to be a part of you.
Yeah.
What other things do you remember about her that when you think about it, it just brings a smile to your face or it's the sunshine in your day?
I think of several gifts that I bought her over the years that other people just gave me a ton of crap about. You know, Christmas a couple of years ago, I bought her a double-sided waffle iron, and other women are like, "He bought you a waffle iron?" And Tina goes, "Yep." And they said, "Why?" And she said, "Because he makes the most amazing waffles when we have breakfast on Sundays or sometimes breakfast for dinner." Waffles became like part of our love language. A couple of years ago, I bought a French fry press. You know, the thing with the lever on it. You put a French fry in, and I mean a potato in, and you get French fries. And I would make myself a sweet potato fries, and a regular potato for her, and they would be side by side in the air fryer, and I would make us homemade French fries. And a KitchenAid like professional mixer with the bowl and all the attachments and everything, and people would go, "He bought you a mixer?" And she says, "Yeah." And he makes the most amazing things for me with it. She never actually used any of these things. I used them all the time. And those became such a part of us. You know, and Tina had, bright blue eyes, beautiful smile, porcelain skin, beautiful, uh, dirty blonde hair. And she was like a little kid. Like, if you remember the original Grinch cartoon, the little girl, Cindy Lou who just had the big eyes and the tuft of hair and the big smile, that was Tina. So I would ask her, like, I would come downstairs from my office or upstairs from my recording studio, and she might have like a thing of maple syrup on the kitchen counter. I go, "You want waffles?" And she would big eyes and beautiful smile. She'd go, "Yes, please." Like that. I go, "Okay, what else you want to make?" And we'd pull down the skillet. We'd make home fries, and we'd make toast, and we'd make bacon, or we'd make sausages, and I make waffles, and it was just all these things. The most what would seem on the surface like the most unromantic things in the world, we made as such an integral part of our story of who we were and how we were as a couple. I love that. Nothing ever pretentious or materialistic or anything about Tina. I mean, she loved her shoes and beautiful clothing, but it was because she just liked it, and it just made her feel good. And I'm a jeans and t-shirt guy, so she would look very nice, and I would just be me, and she loved it.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, Steve. I think you guys really liked food.
We did. We made dinner together at least 4 nights a week, and good, healthy meals. I mean, just good stuff. I used to make homemade pizza. She loved my homemade pizza, and it was a joke. I mean, a success is if I said, "Look, honey, it's round." ish. I never actually made a perfectly round pizza. Never.
More, it was more oval shape than round.
Some were oval, some had some corners. One actually came out heart shaped one day, and somewhere I still have a picture of it. So I would make two small pizzas, and the heart shaped one was hers. I made that one for her. I said, "Look, I made you a heart." And she goes, "Did you do that on purpose?" I go, "Sure."
I didn't lie. I said sure. I didn't say yes. I didn't say
Sure.
no. I said
Sure, I did.
sure.
Yep. And she would, Tina was a world champion eye roller. I mean, just the most sarcastic and funny eye rolls. And one of her favorite phrases, if I started to tell her some big story, or even I gave her an engagement ring Christmas of 2012, and she had no idea. And so she opened it up and she looked at it. She goes, "What's this?" And I said, "Tina Lynn Wadula, will you marry me?" And she looks at me and she goes, "Shut up." And I just started laughing. I go, "Is that a yes?" She goes, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I want to be with you forever." She said, "Yes, okay, yes, yes." But it's
I always
just
find
so
that
funny.
I was gonna say to your point, Steve. I think that's one of the. I don't say it's an issue, but like when you're someone that you like to have a lot of fun,
Yeah,
and I remember I gave that joke to my partner. I used to like pretend to propose.
yeah,
And then she was like, "There's going to be a time where you really do it. And I'm going to say no just to get you back for all the times that you pretended to do it."
yeah,
Right. And it's so funny because it's so fun, but it's humor between the two of you. And
yeah,
it's a language that only you two understand because you two are so intertwined
yeah.
with each other. Let me ask you one final question, Steve, before
Sure,
I let you go here today.
sure.
I want to give you three wishes for this question. What are three things you wish people knew about life after losing their partner and why?
I wish they knew that their partner was still nearby. And I wish they were open enough to see the signs and to pay attention. I wish they would understand that they are still a complete person, that that part has not been reduced. I'm still a whole person. I'm still Tina's husband. And I wish they knew that life goes on. And sometimes people wind up in other relationships down the line.